אוקיי, אז קודם כל צהריים טובים. אני שמח שהצטרפתם אלינו, לכל אלה שבעצם הצטרפו והמתינו. אני קודם כל מתנצל שוב פעם על העיכוב. אנחנו כרגע נמצאים בוובינר חי, הוא משודר גם בפייסבוק, והקלטה שלו תעלה לפאור בי.איי ישראל, לאתר יוטיוב שלי. נמצא איתנו בעצם, אני מארח בוובינר הזה את פיטר, שבעצם הוא, פיטר הוא למעשה יועץ, שהוא מדריך, אוקיי, זה האתר שלו למעשה, והוא בעצם מומחה, שבעצם עובר גם, הוא גם היה צריך להגיע לארץ לפני משהו כמו שנה, והוא בעצם עושה הדרכות ובעצם מלמד על פאור בי.איי וגם על כלים נוספים של מיקרוסופט. הוא מלווה כלים שונים של מיקרוסופט משנת 97, והצעתי לו בעצם להשתתף בוובינר, ושמחתי מאוד שהוא נענה להצעה שלי. אז אני אעביר את המיקרופון אליו, אני לא ארחיב, ראיתם כבר את כל הדברים שרציתי להראות, ואני רוצה להגיד שלום לפיטר. Okay, as okay. So, good afternoon, Peter. I want to greet you and thank you for joining me to this webinar. I think I said a few words on behalf of you, and the microphone is yours. You can start the webinar.
Okay, well, I'd like to set an agenda. So I can talk about many things, Shlomi. And so I think I suggested we could talk about Power BI paginated reports. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very happy to talk about this topic or other topics. What do you suggest?
I think I published for paginated reports. So I think this subject is not... it's not familiar with most of the Power BI users. Maybe on the high level users, they know about it. But I'm glad to hear what you say about paginated reports.
Yeah, okay. So I would love to talk about paginated reports. So why don't I talk about that topic today? And do we encourage questions from anybody?
Yes, they can write type a question on a Q&A window or on the chat, and I'll be happy to pass it. They can write in Hebrew, and I translate it to English, or in English directly, and you will see it. אוקיי, אז אתם יכולים בעצם לשאול כל מה שאתם רוצים, אם זה בצ'אט, או בחלון של ה-question and answers, ב-Q&A, ונשמח לענות על אוקיי?
Okay. So what I will do, let me share my desktop, and then I want to talk about why we have a different type of Power BI report. So I will come to Zoom here, and I will share my desktop. So let me do this.
You have a question already on the chat
already,
box.
and I haven't started yet. What is the question?
Because for paginated report you need a premium $4,000 user.
Right. So I will talk about licensing, and the answer is yes. You will need a premium license or a premium subscription to do this. So I will talk about that during the presentation. There is another option, which is to use an Azure Power BI resource. Okay, now I'm just trying to learn how here in Zoom I now share my desktop. So just bear with me. I see nothing obvious that lets me share my desktop.
You have share screen underneath.
No, you know, it's a very different experience today. So hold on, I will work out.
I made you the host, so you can share the screen.
No, I'm in full screen mode. Now it works. Okay, so excuse me while I just then go and point here. So you let me know when you can see my screen, and then I'm ready to...
Yeah, we can see your screen.
All right, so we're all familiar with Power BI. So what I like to start with is a quick demonstration that compares the Power BI report to the paginated report. So I'm just signing into one of my demonstration tenants. And in this tenant, I have an app. So let me go ahead and open it. Not sure why it is so slow at the moment. Thinking. All right, so I have this app here. And this app has a couple of reports in it. So the report that I'm loading here is what we call a Power BI report. So let's begin with it. And there it is. So this is a classic Power BI report because it allows me to view data through visuals. Although very slow today. I apologize. I don't know why my internet is so slow, but I can interact with this data. So a very obvious thing to do is to change a slicer to a different year. And then maybe I can cross-filter the page by selecting different or even multiple months. Okay, so it's really a very effective way of exploring and interacting with data. Now, in the very same report, I have a second page here called sales order. And when I choose this page, you will see that it is a sales order, and specifically, I'm filtering on one sales order, okay? And that one sales order is here, 51721. And there are, when I scroll down here, 72 different orders to this line. Now, here is the question. If I need to give this report to my customer, and I can do that because I can export to PDF, the question is, what will it look like? Okay, so I'm going to export to PDF, and we will understand that there is a limitation for Power BI reports, is that when I have an order of many rows, we have a problem when we print this to PDF. And we need to be a little bit patient. The export here sometimes takes 20 seconds, maybe a little bit longer. Okay, we have it. So when we see this PDF, here is the problem, that it is just a static set of images. So here on page 2 of my report, so notice here, page 2, that I have my 11 line orders. And then here I have a scroll bar, but you have to believe me, it is an image. I click and I click and I click, but I will never see all of the data here. And this is a good example that this Power BI report isn't suitable for printing to see all the data. Now, what I do have in the same app is a second report named sales order. And this report is a Power BI paginated report. So we'll give it a moment to load. And I'm going to look at the same data, but this time as paginated. This would normally take 1 or 2 seconds. There we go. All right, so rendering my report. And so we can see that this time I have order 51721. And notice this, page 1 of question mark. So what I'll do is I'll navigate to the very last page to see that there are in fact 2 pages to this report. And I can scroll down and I can see here that I'm on page number 2, and I also have a total of 98,000. Now, look what happens when I export a paginated report, that I have many more options, including PDF and Excel and Word and PowerPoint, and data formats like CSV and XML. So I'll export to PDF. And now I want you to have a better understanding of what a paginated report can do. In fact, when this report downloads and opens, what you're going to see is that there are in fact 3 pages. When rendered to a page size, and then we can see here a beautiful report. And look at this, we have a header for the report, we have a table with its own header, and I can scroll down. And then I have footers, and this is page number 1, page number 2, page number 3. Okay, so today in Power BI, you have a choice. Do you use Power BI Desktop to create an analytic report? Remember, the analytic report is great for data exploration and filtering and highlighting and sorting. Or do you intend to print it, in which case you will want to use a paginated report because it could be multiple pages of data. So a paginated report is developed by using a different tool, and the tool is named Power BI Report Builder. And so I'm launching Power BI Report Builder here, and it's a free download from Microsoft. But there was the question about licensing, so I will have that discussion now. You can develop paginated reports at no cost on your desktop, but to render a paginated report, it must be published to the Power BI service. And specifically, it must be published to a workspace. And let me see here, a workspace that is on dedicated capacity. All right, so my workspace here is on dedicated capacity. I know that because of this icon here. And there's one more thing, that the dedicated capacity must have the paginated reports workload enabled. And so that dedicates some resources to the capacity to render paginated reports. So the answer is yes, you will need a dedicated capacity. There are 2 ways to get this, a premium subscription, or you could use an Azure Power BI subscription, but it should only be used for development, test, or embedding of paginated reports into apps. What I've demonstrated to you in my app can only be achieved by using a premium subscription. So let me show you the basics on how to develop a paginated report. So when I open up the report builder, I'm given some choice. Do I want to use a wizard to create my report? And wizards are helpful to getting started quickly. Or, as I'll do this evening, is I'll just create a blank report. And this is what your blank report looks like. This is what we call the report canvas, and it is the layout of the report design. But I'll also introduce you that across the top, we have the ribbon, just like in Excel, and you'll see that we've got ribbon tabs like Home, Insert, and View. We have a report data pane, which is where we create and manage report resources, data source connections, data sets, parameters, even images. On the right-hand side, we have the report data pane. So when you select an object like the report itself, you then have all of the properties that you can view or configure. But notice here, we have property pages. And so common properties can be configured through a window. We have down the bottom, the grouping pane. And so when working with tables and matrices, these are our grid layouts of data. We can use this. And across the top, we have the parameters pane. Now, lastly, at the bottom right corner, we have the ability to control zoom, and we have the ability to switch between design mode and preview. So you can preview the report before you publish it to Power BI. Okay, so that's a very quick introduction to Report Builder, but I will give you many examples of how to use it. And so now the attention should be on the report canvas. And what I'm highlighting for you here is that this is the body of your report. And the report also has a footer that will repeat at the bottom of each page. So the first thing that I do in a paginated report is I open up the report properties. And remember, here I can open up the property page for the report. And this is the important part, because remember, a paginated report is intended to print to paper. Is it portrait? Is it landscape? And my sales order will be portrait. I will use centimeters as my measurement. And then I will choose, in Australia, we use A4 paper size. And so what you can then see is that the A4 paper size is this set of dimensions, 21 centimeters wide and 29.7 centimeters high. The next thing to consider is your margin space. And I'm going to make each of the margins 1 centimeter. And this is where you must think that if the width is 21 and my left and right margins are 1 centimeter each, then my report has 19 centimeters. So I click OK. I click in the body. So now notice that I'm now at the properties for the body. And then I'm going to edit my dimensions here to say that the body of the report is 19 centimeters. That is very important for the paper that I will print on. And then what I'm going to do is move this text box, and this text box displays the execution time. All right. And then in the top, I'm going to create a text box that says this is the sales order. Now, on the insert ribbon, I have the ability to also define a header. This will repeat on every page of my report. So I will add a header, and then I'm going to move this text box so that sales order repeats on every page. Now, while I'm here, I want you to notice that I can also add other items, other text boxes, images, shapes, rectangles. So I'm going to add an image. And so the company logo, I'm going to import this from a file, and I can add an image to the top right corner of my page. And so now what I'm going to do on my home ribbon is I'm going to run this report so I can preview it. And it's a very simple report at this stage that shows me a text box with the title, a logo, and my footer. Now I'm going to use the print layout here because this shows me what the print looks like on a piece of paper. And so far, this is what my order looks like. Very simple. And of course, it is not yet connecting to data. So let me switch back to the design. And now let me introduce some data from a data source. And I do that, it's very simple. And I want you to notice there are two choices. You can connect to a data set in the Power BI service, or you can connect to a data source directly. And if you connect to a data source directly, you have the ability to connect to Azure Analysis Services, an Azure SQL Data Warehouse, and today we call that Azure Synapse. There's also Azure SQL Database. And then for on-premises data, you have SQL Server Analysis Services, and Oracle and Teradata. There's also this new one here, Enter Data. And Enter Data is like Enter Data in Power BI Desktop. You can store a static set of data to be used by your report. This could be useful in a demonstration or a proof of concept. So today my data comes from an Azure SQL database. So I click Build, and I'm going to build up a connection to the database. And then I'll enter the database name. And then I will test the connection. Okay, we have success. That is good. And then the connection string is then stored here. And then I like to provide a more friendly name for the connection. Okay, so I'm just going to use the name of the database. Click OK. And then I want you to notice right here that I now have a data source for the report. So the next thing I do is right-click the data source, and then I add a data set. I'm going to give a name to the data set, DS main. This is the main or the principal data set for my report, and it needs to retrieve all of the sales order line details. Now, for Azure SQL, I could use a query statement, or I could use a store procedure, or I could use the graphical query designer. Let me do that. So now I can build up a query to my Azure SQL database for the sales order report. All right, so in the database, I have many tables. And in the reseller sales table, I have the order line number. In the related table for the reseller, I have the reseller name. And then in the product table, I have the English product name. And then I have details like quantity and price and sales amount. So I have included 6 different fields in my report. And the next thing that I'm going to do is to define a filter. I'm going to filter where the sales order number is equal to SO51721. Where did I get that order from? That is this sales order right here. So I want you to remember that that sales order has 51721 has 72 lines. So now that I've put this filter here, I'm going to go ahead and run the query. And so querying the Azure SQL database, we should see that there are 72 order lines. Let's see. And here we are. So 72 order lines. Now, let me point out this very important checkbox here that allows me to parameterize the filter. And when I check this checkbox and I click OK, my query is now added to the data set. And notice this, the where clause is using a parameter. Okay, so the next thing on page 2 for the data set, I can provide more friendly and concise names for the field. And now I'm ready to click OK, but I want you to look here. So specifically here and here and here. Watch what happens when I click OK. All right, so first of all, we now have a data set with fields. I can now see that I have a parameter that the user can enter. And when I expand, I see the parameter here. So let's take a look at its properties. It has a unique name. It has a prompt. So that is the text that we see right here. We could have available values. That means a drop-down list could be presented. And there are default values of which the value that I entered into the query designer has been set. So automatically this report will filter by this number. Okay, so notice now that this value has changed. So let me add some details to the header of the report page. In the header, I can insert a text box and place the text box directly beneath my title. And inside the text box, I'm going to enter order number. And this is what I like about paginated reports, is I can right click and I can add a placeholder. And a placeholder is an expression, and I'm going to build up an expression to the value of my parameter. And then I can format order number as bold. And let me do one more text box. This time I'm going to show the name of the reseller. And I use a placeholder and its expression to bring in the reseller from my data set. So I think it's time to run the report. Remember, now I'm in preview, and we can see here that I'm parameterizing by that sales order, and now we've got to see details on the header of each page. Awesome. So Shlomi, are there any questions I can answer at this stage before I continue?
Yeah, we have two questions. You can see it on the Q&A window. Okay.
I don't see it. If you want to read them to me, that would be better.
Yeah, of course. Hello, good to have an expert advice. Without an enterprise license, how can schedule a report from the service to Excel to export in Excel? This is the first one.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, I can see the questions now. So that question is: you will need not an enterprise license. That's a SQL Server license. This is Power BI paginated reports. So you would need a premium subscription to publish the report, and then, and I will talk about subscriptions later. When we publish this report, you can use a schedule to deliver the report by email to your email address or the email address of other people. So the answer is you would actually need to have a premium subscription with Power BI for this to happen. If you do this with SQL Server reporting services, then you could do this with different licenses for SQL Server, but it's not my specialty to know SQL Server licensing. Okay, but the key part is scheduling a report to deliver or export in Excel. That says to me that you need SQL Server or Power BI licenses to do that. Second question I see is, what is the difference from SSRS? And I'm glad you asked that question now. So far, everything is almost identical to SSRS, but remember, when I created a data source, that I have the ability to create a connection to a Power BI data set. Paginated reporting services reports today do not support that. But there are many similarities, and I will talk about SQL Server reporting services shortly. Okay, well, let me continue with the demo, because what I now need to do is to show all of the order details in the body of the report. So on my insert ribbon, I have these data regions. Let's do this. Table, matrix, and list. And these are very powerful because they are templates, and the templates will expand according to the data that you have. Let me explain. I'm going to insert a table into the body of my report, and I position it at the top of the body. Now, what you see here is, in fact, 6 text boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But they work together as a template. And so what we really have here is the header row and a detail row. I know it's the detail row because of this icon here. And what I can do is hover my cursor over the text box in the detail, and then I'm going to select the line field. I'm going to select the product field and the quantity field. And when I right-click the column guide, I insert a column to the right, and there is my price. I do this again, and there is my sales. Okay, so it's done many things for me. In fact, what you see here in the text box when I open the expression is that it is to return the value of the line field. So it uses VB.NET as its expression language. And then what you see here is actually just text, because this is the header of my table. So I'm going to preview the report now, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so the first thing to notice is we have 5 pages to the report now. And then we have a table here, but it's not a very well formatted table. Let's look at this. But you've got terrible formatting here. I've got word wrapping here. I don't like the formats here and here. And then if I go to the last page, there's no total. Okay, so let me fix this up. I return here, and the first thing I do for these 2 text boxes is I add a total. And you can now see 2 expressions. Give me the sum of the sales field. Give me the sum of the quantity field. Now, this is in fact the footer of the table. And so I'm going to put the word total here, and then I'm going to format all of those text boxes in bold. And then in the header of the table, I'm going to use a different color. Let me use a green with white text. I'm going to make it bold. I'm going to increase the font size to 14. No, that's too much, 12. And then I'm going to increase the height of the text box, and I'm going to make it vertical aligned in the center. So it's just like working in Excel with your colors and fonts and formulas. Now, for the product, I'm going to make it wider so that we don't have word wrap. For the quantity, I'm going to format, and I can do that here as a number. Okay, or my preference is in the properties, we've got a format property here. And if you know .NET as a developer, you might be familiar with .NET codes like N0. N is for number, and 0 is for 0 decimal places. Now, when I do that for these 2 columns, I can format as a C2. C is for currency, and 2 is 2 decimal places. And if we look at the properties for the report itself, I can see that, where is it? Your language property controls currency. So let me just today come in here and say, you know, help me out with this one. Where do I find Hebrew for, what is the code for Hebrew in Israel?
IL, Israel, ILHER, maybe?
So let's have a look.
HGHIL.
Is it any of these?
You cannot see, it's very, very small. Just a minute. Ah, okay.
So I think the first 3 characters, the first 2 characters I thought were country.
Okay,
it has
so
to be
it's
here somewhere.
IL.
Anyone know which is the code for?
Maybe IL for Israel.
So if I find IL, I have II and I have IS.
Hebrew, HEBIL.
This one here, I think. Okay, so let's see what happens when I now run the report. Is this the right character? Maybe not.
Yeah, I think it's yep.
Is it the shekel?
Yeah, it's a new shekel. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So
the
basically,
currency.
we've got AdventureWorks using shekels today. I hope those numbers make some sense. I just want to format these here as right justified, but now you can see how easy it is to format a report. And when I scroll down to, because you now see that I have 3 pages. If I scroll to page 2, we have a problem. There's no header here anymore. And also, I don't like this. In the footer, I want the page number. So there is room for improvement. And what I'm going to do is turn on the advanced mode. Do you see down here? I apologize. This is a terrible thing in Report Builder, but I need to select the static group, and there's a property that says repeat on new page. I make this true. Okay. And now when I run the report, we see on page 2 that I now have a repeated header, okay? But I still have the problem that I do not have the page number down here. So I come to the text box in the footer, and I make it wide, and then I build up a more interesting expression. For example, execution time UTC. So here's the thing. Execution time is using the coordinated universal time, or sometimes we call it Greenwich Mean Time. So I'm going to format that time using a format string like in Australia, we go day, day, month, year, and then 24-hour clock.
We use
and then
the
I
same.
Continue.
We use the same. Yeah, yeah.
So I think centimeters, A4 paper,
yeah,
and day, month, year. Okay, we have similarities with Australia.
yeah.
Now in VB.NET, I can build up the concatenation to a space and a pipe, and the word page and another space, and then I concatenate from my built-in fields. And look what I have here. And the one that I want is the page number. So I double click and my page number is added to the expression. Click OK, run the report. And now we see, let's do a zoom. There we go. So executed at 12:55 UTC on June the 2nd, we're at page number 1. So I've arrived at the end of my report design. And to finish this off, what I'm going to do is make sure that this blank area at the bottom, it needs to go, because it might result in a blank page. So I remove all of that extra space. I edit my parameter and I remove the default value. So now when I run the report, the user must enter a sales order number. And then I save the report, and I'm going to save this report to my computer. And let me call it sales order. What's a good word for the presentation tonight?
Israeli presentation.
Or Israeli presentation. Done. Okay. Yeah. Now, exactly like reporting services in SQL Server, the document that I'm saving is an RDL document. And remember, I'm saving it to a local folder. But here's the interesting part. I can save it to the Power BI service. And what I will do is publish it to a workspace in the service. Have this very strange, slow performance. I don't know why. It's thinking.
It's only today? Usually it's not like this?
No, it's normally fast. So there's something, maybe the Zoom meeting is interfering with my internet. But I choose a workspace and then I choose a name. So sales order Israeli presentation. And now the RDL file is published to the service. So when I come to the Power BI portal and I open up my workspace for demo RDL, we see right here, there is my report. And now to open the report, I can just click it and it is rendered in the Power BI service. Again, this is very slow today. And so I have a parameter, and the parameter is, remember, SO51721. And then here in the top right corner, I just click View Report. And there is the sales order report. Now, how many more minutes do I have? Can I show a little bit more in demonstration? Would you like to see that?
Sure. We started a little bit with the delay, so you have another 10 minutes.
Yeah, well, let me improve this and show you some fantastic features in paginated reports. So remembering a sales order number might be difficult. So what I'm going to do is create a new data set called DS Reseller. And the query is going to return all of the reseller at the company. So remember that I have a dim reseller table. So I just bring in the reseller key and the reseller name. And I'm going to order them by reseller name. So I now have a new data set in my report that is DS reseller. And now I create a new parameter named reseller key. And it is an integer for the reseller key. And then in the available values, I use my data set. So now notice the addition of a new parameter here. In fact, what I'm going to do is drag and drop. So I now have reseller as number 1 and then order number as number 2. Let me preview the report. And you can now see that I get to choose which reseller. But what I want to do is what we call a cascading parameter. That the next parameter should be a drop-down list of orders for that reseller. And so I come back to my report design and I add a third data set. This time it will be DS sales order. Select the distinct sales order number from fact reseller sales where, and this is the important part, where the reseller key equals, do you remember the @ symbol that is used for a query parameter? And then I order it by sales order number. So this data set will return all sales orders for the reseller key. So I edit my second parameter and I use that data set for its available values. Watch what happens. When I run the report, I must first enter a reseller and then I can choose a sales order for that reseller. And this is what we call a cascading parameter. Okay, very powerful. And you can have many of these that help you filter down your reports. So now I can go ahead and save this and I will publish this back to Power BI. I think it's doing it. Saving, saving, saving. Come here. Loading the report.
Sure.
Nope, it didn't save it. I think I have to file, save as, back to the Power BI service, and then override this report. Now I can come here and reload the report. So I want to leave you with some good reasons to consider paginated reports. First of all, they are designed for printing. That if you need your reports to be many pages, then paginated reports are the way to go. They're very powerful for parameters, as I've demonstrated to you here. They support many more rendering formats. So let's just see, for this report here, I could export this to 7 possible formats, including data formats like Excel and CSV and XML. Now, somebody asked about delivering the report, and paginated reports include subscriptions. So this ability to subscribe to the report, and you choose the rendering format, and then you choose the email addresses, so fred@hotmail.com. What is the subject of my email? Subject goes here, message goes here. How often do I want to send this report? Once a week on Sunday. In Australia, Monday is the beginning of the week, but I know in Israel it is Sunday. So there we have a difference. And then you would set the time zone to work that should happen at 8 a.m. every Sunday morning, and that you can also grant them permission to access the report directly. All right, now if I click save, then Power BI as a service will automatically, on your schedule, deliver that subscription. There are many other good reasons to use paginated reports. So others include the ability to connect natively to data sources. And you can use SQL or MDX or DAX to query your data. These data regions are very powerful, okay? So the list, the matrix, and the table, allowing you to produce grid layouts of data that you can control exactly what your report needs to look like. So that is my introduction to paginated reports. Just as a reminder, yes, you will need to have a premium license to render these in the service. And my last thing to give you is this. I will copy this URL, and Shlomi, I will share it with you. But this is an excellent free resource to learn more about paginated reports. Okay, let's just wait the page to load. I have very slow internet. It's very strange. That shouldn't take 1 second. I misspelled it. That's the problem. P-R-I-A-D. Copy. Try this again. This is a free course online. It's about 4 hours and 20 minutes of training content that you can watch. And there's a good story because we also give you a free set of labs to do on your own computer. All right, so if you have this link, you will find you have access to this video course. And here are all of the videos to watch on how to do paginated reporting. But here we have what's called a self-study kit. And when you click on this link, it will download a zip file, and it will give you all of the resources for you to complete 8 labs learning all about paginated reports. So I strongly encourage, if you want to know more about paginated reports, to use this link here.
I will put the link under the video on the YouTube channel, so you can reach this website. Okay.
So I thank you very much for inviting me and allowing me to share the story about Power BI paginated reports. And,
thank you very much.
If there are no questions, then I'm happy to say good luck, and I hope you have fun learning how to create paginated reports.
Great webinar. Thank you very, very much, Peter, for joining me, for joining us to the webinar, for the Israeli audience. and hope we can meet sometime in Israel. You know,
I was in Israel maybe exactly a year ago. I was in Haifa, and I had the chance to
living
visit
in
the
Haifa,
Microsoft team there.
okay.
And well, I think we tried to do a user group, but it didn't meet the schedule. So next time I come to Israel, then we will definitely do this.
Okay, great news. Okay, so תודה רבה לכולם שהצטרפתם. כמו שבעצם פיטר אמר, הלינק יהיה מתחת הסרטון. הסרטון הזה, ההקלטה שלו בעצם תעלה לערוץ היוטיוב שלי. I want to thank Peter Meyers for joining us, and thank you all for joining us to this webinar, and see you on the next webinar. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Bye, good night, and good day for all. Bye.